Are you guys feeling good? We are the Group 5. Get ready as we travel back to the medieval period. Before we start this journey, we would like to share this wonderful quote by threadless artist Malfiol that art speaks where words are unable to explain. This means that even the most complicated ideas and feelings can be expressed by an art. Let's now go back to the past. Are you familiar with these artworks? You've probably seen them mostly in Catholic churches, right? These artworks are examples of medieval art, and it was made 1,000 years ago. In this journey, you'll be able to know what is medieval art, its characteristics, its history, the famous artists or proponents during this period, and you'll also be introduced to its examples. So, what is medieval art? Medieval art refers to the art produced in Europe during medieval period, also known as Middle Ages, which was passed over from 476 AD to the early stages of Renaissance in the 14th century. Medieval art is inspired from the aesthetic heritage of the Roman Empire and the iconographic traditions of the early Christian church. These sources were combined together with the barbarian artistic culture of Northern Europe to make a remarkable artistic legacy. Medieval art includes sculpture, illuminated manuscripts, stained glass, metalwork, mosaics, and frescoes. Medieval art of the Western world is expansive and covers vast scope of time and place over 1,000 years of art in Europe and at a certain periods in Western Asia and Northern Africa. Within this long period of medieval art, there are 8 art movements. These are early Christian, Byzantine, Anglo-Saxon, Viking, Insular, Carolingian, Ottonian, Romanesque, and Gothic art. Due to the emerging of this variety of styles, the Middle Ages art period can generally be divided up into 3 distinct phases. These are Byzantine, Romanesque, and Gothic art. Byzantine art is the beginning of the Middle Ages and is often called Dark Ages. These periods span from 500 to 1000 AD, and Byzantine art is the main form of art during that time, and it was produced by Byzantium or the Eastern Roman Empire. Byzantine art focused on the symbolism of their art. It was characterized by its lack of realism because the artist does not make their painting realistic. This art focuses on religious themes, particularly applied in mosaics, icon painting, and fresco wall painting. Next is Romanesque art. Romanesque art started around 1000 AD and lasted to around 12th century with the beginning of Gothic period. It was influenced by both the Romans and Byzantine art. Its focus was on religion and Christianity, and it witnessed a return of large-scale architecture that was almost fortress-like in appearance, as well as a fresh interest in expressive human shapes with the use of rounded arcs, substantial walls, piers, and barrel and rib vaults. And lastly, the Gothic art. Gothic art was developed in northern France in 12th century out of Romanesque art. Its 5K architecture features are large stained glass windows, pointed arcs, rib vaults, flying buttresses, and ornate decoration. And now, let us proceed into characteristics of medieval art. Medieval art has elaborately decorative patterns, bright colors, iconography, and Christian subject matter.
What happened in history during this time? Okay, so the period of time that has been classified as the early medieval art is quite complicated, as it includes artworks that range from the 50th century Common Era all the way through to 1000 Common Era. In addition to this, early medieval artworks demonstrate a diverse cultural influence, which combined classic Greek and Roman artistic components with Christian subject matter and decorative designs taken from the pagan north. At the time of the emergence of the early medieval art, the Catholic Church and other wealthy patrons began to commission projects for particular social and religious ceremonies. Medieval artists were required to create artworks that featured biblical tales and classical themes for churches, while the insides were intricately adorned with Roman mosaics, elaborate paintings, and marble incrustations due to the religious influence. Many of the oldest examples of early medieval art remain in Roman catacombs and burial beneath cities. So these works influenced artisans of lesser-known arts like blacksmiths, shoemakers, and weavers who imitated the medieval style in the object they manufactured. So, the majority of the art produced during the medieval period was religious in nature and made use of Catholic subjects and themes. It was dominated by feudalism within the society. Feudalism existed as the dominant social structures in medieval society at that time, where nobles effectively held control over and ruled all of the lands. Society was made up of the richest members and peasants who were forced to answer to the nobles controlling their land. It is vastly different as the upper class experienced wealth, power, and status, while the other lower class were expected to serve others. Due to this, a distinction existed between the two, which was only bridged by the presence of religion. This is the reason why many individuals of the early times were priests and monks. In addition to this, being artists as religion played a major part in daily life within the medieval period.
According to Kai Green, in the mind of every artist, there is a masterpiece. Who are the famous proponents or artists during medieval period, and what inspired them to create or begin such artworks? Each of the famous sculptors, painters, and artists of the Middle Ages were founders of the movement towards greater realism, which culminated in the Renaissance style. These are some of the famous artists in the medieval period. Lorenzo Ghiberti was famous as a medieval sculptor and painter. He was a founder of the Renaissance, an intellectual movement that in the Italian city of Florence in the early 50th century. He was influenced in the 11th century by Arab polymath Alhazen. Giotto de Bondone was famous as an architect, sculptor, and painter. He broke away from the Byzantine art style and pioneered new ideals of naturalism and created a sense of pictorial space. He was taught around in the age of 10 and was influenced by Arnolfo classicizing sculpture. Fra Angelico was famous as a Florentine artist of the Middle Ages who specialized in artistic painting. He was influenced by the work of early pioneers of the Renaissance in Florence, particularly the sculpture of Ghiberti. Leon Battista Alberti developed architectural principles were founded on the importance of painting as a base for architecture. He was influenced by the early Renaissance and was inspired from the ancient Romans. Filippo Brunelleschi was an artist, sculptor, and architect. He developed a technique forming the basis of Renaissance architecture and also developed the use of perspective. He was influenced by the merchant and medical doctor named Paolo dal Pozzo. As what Pablo Picasso said, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. These are the subworks of medieval art. The Christ Pantocrator. The Christ Pantocrator of St. Catherine's Monastery at Senai is one of the oldest Byzantine religious icons dating from the 6th century. Lamentation, or the Mourning of Christ, is a fresco painted by the Italian artist Giotto as part of his cycle of the life of Christ. Bernward doors are the two leaves of a pair of Attonian bronze doors. They were commissioned by Bishop Bernward. Bernward column, also known as the Christ column, is a bronze column and was commissioned by Bishop Bernward.
Thanks for traveling with us. Bye!